crisis well held in our minds on a day-to-day basis, because that should drive us and motivate us to try and make the biggest difference we can. Some of you I know I've met before, and others I haven't. I want to say a little bit about Green Left and the Green Party and eco-socialism, and where I find my role living here in Britain without proportional representation. It was around 7 years ago when a significant group of leading people really within the Green Party met together and decided to form Green Left. And a few of them sort of drifted off from that. But it's been a group that has been developing. It's relatively small, but we punch well above our weight. And this Green Left group, we decided that we would, as a baseline, just endorse the first Eco-Socialist manifesto as launched by Joel Covell and Michael Lowry in Paris in 2001. Is it? Yeah, 2001. So anyway, so for 7 years, there's been a bit of me that's called myself an eco-socialist. I've sometimes felt like a secret eco-socialist, wondering if the term would really be useful in the work that I was trying to do. Part of that was for 4 years in local government as a councillor. But with my councillor title, that did get me invited to go and talk and address different groups. And now and again I would judge whether or not I would use the word eco-socialism, and sometimes I'd be a little bit apologetic about it, and other times I would judge my audience and say, well, this is a term that might be useful, but I wasn't 100% maybe fully sure. You know, was it a title that was going to be useful? Putting it out as an offering, you know, to describe best my political position. So why the term eco-socialism? Surely socialism with a modern socialist analysis in the current economic and ecological crisis must include environmental understanding. From the socialist tradition of William Morris, a clear link between social justice and the natural world can be seen. But, you know, Louise has talked about a lot of this, the ecological disasters, the environmental crisis that's threatened the viability of this one planet, this one home that we have, and the ravages of war alongside it, continue to make a political vacuum in response to all of this, despite the show of global talks. Back in 2007, Evo Morales, president of Bolivia, declared, "The world is suffering from a fever due to climate change, and the disease is the capitalist development model." Well, no wonder we're faced with an almost total impasse when it comes to global discussions. The wealthy, the powerful, are set on a path, the only one they profess to know, of ever-increasing growth and profits, money that will keep them in power, help them control the media, the message, and to bury alternative messages and narratives. With capitalism, there is no end to the need for growth. It is infinite. And can a finite Earth support an infinite project? No, it can't. So when I joined the Green Party of England and Wales in 2005, I was attracted to the social justice and the environmental understanding. Policies for a less stressed, unequal society and world, for cooperation locally and globally, and for peaceful solutions to struggle. However, although implicitly an anti-capitalist society, you read the policies of the Green Party of England and Wales, the Green Party of England and Wales is not explicitly anti-capitalist. And that's what Green Left have been doing in a way. We've been engaging in work with the party as a whole to develop a deeper understanding of politics and how it really works in the world. We're a relatively small group, as I've said, but we do an awful lot of work. We put on the fringe meetings at conference, we put important motions to conference, we are talking in the media about various issues, we are engaged with a lot of areas of the party, some who can't bear the thought that we exist, and others who are beginning to have some respect because things that we are saying, are coming to pass within the party. Some of the things we warned about, they're happening, and there is a conversation, a little bit resisted, but we'll see what we do. Generally, there are socialists, Marxists, who've begun to understand that we cannot be red without being green. And now there are Greens, like us, who are working to build a cohesive formulation that is red and green at its core. The urgency of this environmental crisis means that we need practical, ecological planning of the economy to halt further destruction and maybe to mitigate some damage that has already been done. And we need to replace the current economic model, exposed for all of those who want to see it, in all its corruption, its manipulative interventions, and much of it in its true worthlessness if you try and translate it into any real-world terms and values. We need to replace it with planning that is practical, responding to reality, constructive, democratically derived and driven and supported. Now, Green Party policies may be based on the recognition that decision-making at the most relevant local level is more democratic and is of a better quality. But this gets us nowhere fast if power is still tied up with corporate wealth, corporate power and influence. So under austerity economics, the majority are the ones suffering, the vulnerable and the weak more so. The attack is exposed as ideological with the welfare, public service cuts, workers' rights and civil liberties attacked. All are sacrificed by those arguing to protect their free market neoliberal values. All are argued for in the name of deficit and debt reductions, which is actually not even working over here or across Europe. Never worked anywhere really, has it? But this is nothing but an attempt to see all human beings as consumers, to cream the profits of every activity, in a continuing race towards wealth creation, wealth that is ever concentrated in the hands of the few, the 1%, or really maybe the 0.1% at the top of that. We need to look after the planet, the people's only home. We keep looking up there, but we haven't found anything else yet. Without war, without endless competition, with rules set by the ruling elite, we need alternatives. The people need to look after their future and their planet. And they must appreciate the need to plan well ahead. A citizens' revolution? It does need to be demanded by the people, the 99%, or it will soon be rejected as soon as we come across some difficulties. When we're having to do our transfer of energy, power, perhaps become a bit less materialist, less wasteful. Uncomfortable little changes, any change is difficult for people to adopt, but if they are demanding it because they've looked at the problem and they want a future that's better for most of us, they'll put up with a little bit of difficulty and change when they know it genuinely is we're all in it together, and not just the millionaires in our government here telling the rest of us at the lower economic demographics level that we are the ones who will have to pay for a banking crisis. We can't impose such radical changes that are needed. So I would say, yes, I believe we do need a citizens' revolution. Here we don't have PR elections. Our successes in government are very hard won. And having gained 1 million votes, and I think it was 1989, the electorate soon realised that with their votes dispersed across the country, it didn't come to much, it didn't represent itself as places in power. It was a symbolic vote and much welcomed as that, but it didn't change anything politically with who was representing them, locally or in Parliament. In France, it would be easier for me to be more enthusiastic about electoral work at all levels. Mélenchon's historic support at the last election gives many of us a boost to think that many people will be willing to say, yes, we want to change, we want something different. And when I visited the Congress in Bordeaux, I must say, entering the conference festooned with beautifully designed banners and posters, all declaring eco-socialism at the heart of the way forward. It was a fantastic boost. It was brilliant. For me, who'd been a quiet, private, secret, tentative, but genuine, hard-edged eco-socialist, I almost felt like we were about to take over the world. A few days later, obviously, feet back on the ground and back in British politics. It's a little bit different. So back home, our reality not so far down the road as that, on this essential journey, our route's going to have to be a bit different. So my work now is concentrated in building a mass movement that's confident to reject austerity economics, open to hear the call for a red-green future, able to coordinate our actions across the country and across Europe, like we did in November the 14th. I'm chair of Coalition of Resistance. We arranged a central London event. Then our TUC came along and spoke on our platform, but it hadn't happened through the trade unions yet, but I think they'll be ready next time. They are coming on board. So a mass movement will be needed. They will need to see that tackling the future, an economically improved future for us all that looks after our planet is in the interests of the majority and is essential for a future at all. So tackling the economic and the environmental crises, two sides of the same coin, as I'm often quoted as saying, ending inequalities, building strong, healthy, participatory democracies, and with new ways of judging what success is. So not judging success by your GDP, but by having a population that's healthy, content enough, with peace, and maybe love too. So. Yeah.
I think I'm quite embarrassed, really, speaking when I've been invited by a French left organisation, because in Britain we produced Harold Wilson, but you have the Paris Commune. So, what can we say to you? It's also, there are different political affiliations, and obviously I'm international coordinator of the Green Party of England and Wales. Relate to the French Greens. I also really want to flag up socialist resistance, and the work they do for eco-socialism is absolutely splendid. And the most militant and the most ideological, sophisticated eco-socialist political party in the world, of course, is their section in the Philippines, the Revolutionary Workers' Party, who do very impressive things. So, what I would say is that there's maybe a rich ecosystem of different eco-socialist organisations, and I think that's how you do Leninism today, that it's got to be plural and experimental and so on. So I'm very pleased to be here, but slightly embarrassed on both counts. Now, I was going to talk a little bit about the threat from capitalism, alternatives to capitalism, practical politics. Very, very easy to forget all sorts of important things. So, I was going to read something which I think is very, very important. And this is